The internship with the Department of Energy was different and interesting because it felt more like a job where you go to work, right? You don't have a homeroom of people that you like socialize with and hang out with. But I think as an older student, it kind of began to dawn on me that like these internships begin to mirror adult life and adult work, which is collaborative but can be very independent.
Greetings. Welcome to Eric's Angle, the podcast for Iowa State mathematics students. I am your host, Eric Weber, chair of the mathematics department at Iowa State University. Today's guest is a 2024 graduate of our program, earning a PhD in mathematics. His name is Christian McRoberts, and he is here to discuss his internship experience at the United States Department of Energy, where he was developing energy policy. Christian also has a compelling story about why he wanted to study mathematics and why he also wanted to come to Iowa State. This is an extra long interview that I conducted with Christian, and so it will be published as a double episode. Please welcome Christian McRoberts. Hi, Christian. Welcome to Eric's Angle.
Hello, Eric. Thank you for having me here. It's great to be here.
So why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, my name is Christian McRoberts. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I went to high school at Morgan Park High School. It's on the south side of Chicago, near the Beverly Morgan Park area. I knew since high school that I wanted to do math. I think that's a nice start for it. I just always loved the way that math made me think, and I love the way that I could do math peacefully, and it's one of those things you can start and pick up, and it's not like reading where you kind of forget, you come back and I can get back into it. And so then with that in mind, I did a bachelor's in mathematics at Morehouse College. And even back in high school, I knew I wanted a PhD. So of course I came to Iowa State University to get my PhD in mathematics. A little bit funny, maybe we'll talk about down the line how I ended up here, but it's a funny full circle story if you think about it throughout all the years. Outside of that, I will say I like to sing, right? I think I have a lot of little hobbies, but math, singing, and video games, a little bit about me.
Math, singing, and video games. That's a combination, yes.
Everything keeps me engaged mentally or physically in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Yes. So there does seem, I'm a terrible singer, unfortunately. I wish I was a good singer. There does seem to be a correlation between mathematical interests and musical interests. So that's fascinating that you have that experience.
I knew there were two people I went to undergrad with. They were both math and music double majors. Only one of them finished with both degrees, but it was very interesting to see how they tied math to music. And when we would do math together, how they would talk about music at the same time. I wish that I could be at that level where I could do both or think about both. It's something I think about trying or picking up now that I'm done with the math PhD. So I'm looking for like books. I want to learn to play the piano. It seems like a nice crossover where for math, we have certain sets of rules at a baseline, and the same applies to music. So there may be like a little function between the two that I can have fun in.
Mm-hmm. So you said something a moment ago about knowing in high school that you wanted to get a PhD in mathematics.
Yes. I knew very early on. I knew early on that I wanted to be a doctor of something. I didn't know what, but I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And when I got to high school, that's when I knew I wanted to be a doctor of mathematics. Yeah.
It's impressive that you even knew that was a thing in high school. I don't know that I would have known that was a thing in high school.
Yeah. when I was a kid, I didn't make friends until very later on in life. So I was a TV kid, a stay at home, like under my mom kid. So I watched a lot of Cyber Chase, which, if you don't know about Cyber Chase, it's an amazing kid show on PBS. It's dedicated to computer science, math. So you do a lot of those different skills, seeing patterns, you do combinatorics. It's a really great show. It still comes on to this day if I can get anybody to watch it. But I watched a lot of that, and I think exposure to educational things like that. And I'm natural curious as well, if I haven't said that, but it leads me to Google things, and I think that's how I got exposure to see like what's the terminal thing, or where would this journey end if I decided to start it. So
Yeah, that's neat. I think it's great that a TV show actually got you interested in mathematics. That's impressive.
yeah, it's funny. It's very funny because at the beginning of this month, so at the beginning of May, I went to Louisiana to see my best friend and my niece, and I watched it with her. So when it was my turn to watch the kid, I was like, well, we're gonna watch Cyber Chase, because if there's anything we're gonna do, it's make a math and science kid. So I watched every episode again, and it was really fun. It really made me feel like, I keep saying full circle, but it felt like a full circle moment. Like, wow, this is what triggered me to do it, and now I'm at the end and I'm done, and I'm like, wow, and I can give it to someone else. So I wish there was more things like that, at least. I know there are a lot of kid shows, but I wish there were more that were like math but entertaining the way that Cyber Chase was.
Well, did you just have an idea of a project to do next? Is to create a television show about mathematics?
See, I sometimes think about so in addition to knowing I wanted a PhD in math, I think I knew I wanted to teach for a very long time. And so I have a very, I won't say extensive, but I've done a lot of work into giving back through teaching. So like tutoring or just helping people out in undergrad with their math. Um, I don't think I'm creative enough to make a project for children, right? I know what it was like to be a kid, and I know how you want that engagement, like and then what seems cool. I feel like there's so much that goes into it that I feel like I can't do it. But if somebody helmed it and they said, I have this idea, I would love to put in my like 2 cents mathematically. I think I know my lane in that avenue. I don't think I have a creative, which is interesting, right? I like to sing, but I do not have a creative finger, nail, leg, anything.
All right. Maybe we can find someone to partner with, huh?
Right? Maybe one day. Maybe
Yes.
one day.
So you said something about coming to Iowa State was a full circle. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm from Chicago, and I don't know if this may be like a Mandela effect thing, but I think I used to see commercials for Iowa State come on TV, right? And a lot of people come to Iowa for school. My sister went to University of Iowa. My best friend and her sister went to Coe College. My cousin went to Grinnell, and I saw everybody going to Iowa, and I said, no, not me. So I went to Atlanta, where I went to Morehouse College. And then it was time to go to grad school. And at the time, there was a professor here named Michael Young, and the Black math community is really small. So my advisor slash mentor at Morehouse, she did a summer program with Michael back when Michael was a graduate student. So they knew each other well. And so he was heavily recruiting me, and she was telling me, oh, Christian, you'll like Michael and everything. And I was like, I am not going to Iowa. Everybody back home goes to Iowa. I refuse to do it. And the full circleness of it, I guess, is looking back at it, I think Iowa State was one of the better choices I could have came to when I think about the type of things that a program wants, the environment of the program, who's there, right? I think it was a top choice to come here. So it's interesting to have seen commercials, see family and friends all come out here and somehow still get sucked into it. But I won't say it was horrible, right? I think it was fun.
Fantastic. Well, I certainly like to hear that. I'm glad that you came, and I'm glad that you had a good experience, and you are finishing up your PhD, like you just graduated. So now it's what's next in your career trajectory, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. But I know that you had a good experience with an internship while you were here at Iowa State. So let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so I believe if I'm recalling time right, summer of 2023, I did the Department of Energy, remembering the word is Omni Technology Alliance. It's through the Department of Energy. It was an interesting summer internship. It was 10 weeks. And so it's for undergraduate students and graduate students. So the way I found out about it is we have a graduate student specialist, and we get a lot of emails regarding different departments through the U.S. government. So we get some Department of Defense, mostly in Department of Energy. So they mentioned this summer internship where you'll be doing some energy project. You'll be paired with a mentor. I think internships are always tricky for math people who are trying to do industry level work or apply their mathematics, but they've always kind of delved into the pure or the logical side of mathematics. So when I applied for it, I applied having no real deep exposure into like data science or what does it mean to do math for a non-educational entity. And so, yeah, it was really interesting in that regard. And I think we can talk more. I don't want to deviate too far. If you have some specific question that you might want to ask now, I could keep going and keep digging into it. But do you have any questions to start?
No, please keep going.
Okay. So as a graduate student, I think the program, the way it looked was different for undergraduates and graduates. I was able to do the program remotely. So no matter whether you were there in person or showing up remotely, you got a housing stipend as well as a stipend for the work you did. So showing up remotely, it was difficult for me because I didn't have like the community of doing an internship with people. So I have done other internships before. I've done some work at the Moffitt Cancer Research Center in Tampa, Florida. I've done stuff with, I believe they call themselves the Simons Law Firm Mathematical Institute now. They used to go by MSRI. So I've done the MSRI Up program there. And I think one thing I always loved about those programs were that you get like a small community of people to do the math with. It like reminded me of being in elementary school or high school and you have like a homeroom and you know everybody and like you guys go get lunch together, you do your math together. So I think the internship with the Department of Energy was different and interesting because it felt more like a job where you go to work, right? You don't have a homeroom of people that you like socialize with and hang out with. You kind of just show up and do your work and you have your tasks expected of you. Not to say that we didn't have like program experiences to like meet people, where sessions were hosted to speak to individuals who have been with the Department of Energy for a while, to kind of network. There were those experiences, but I think as an older student, it kind of began to dawn on me that like these internships begin to mirror adult life and adult work, which is collaborative but can be very independent, right, to start. So I think that's a little foundation about the internship. The work that I did revolved around energy justice, in the sense of we can think about all the different natural disasters, or we can think about all the things that affect energy, such as when it's too hot, how power lines are affected. We can think about when it's too cold, how power lines can become affected, but also think about how we put up different structures to gain power in the neighborhoods we put them in. And so there are different socioeconomic factors as well as environmental factors that go into how a certain, they use the word disadvantaged community, but we look at census tract data to see who isn't receiving justice when it comes to energy, like who is being injustice. And from there, we can start picking apart, okay, now that we see who has the most burden when it comes to energy, we can look at how can we help them best, right? So at my time there, they were creating something called the Justice 40 model, where you can look at a bunch of different communities and see the type of impact that different factors have on them, so that other entities can come in and say, oh, well, let's try to give them this preventative measure like weatherization, right? So maybe in some communities we want to install some solar panels to help, whereas in another community it may be too late for solar panels, right? Like people may need money to pay their bills immediately. So looking at the different data about how we can, my word choice is always afar, but how we can bring those things together to support communities who actually need help. It's a little bit everywhere, but mostly dealt with energy justice to bring it full circle.
And so how do you think your training as a mathematician helped inform you while you were working on these problems?
So it's interesting. I like the work that I did, and I enjoyed the fact that I could like grow my knowledge of data science. I didn't really get to do any math, right? So I didn't do, I don't do any calculus. I don't get to like think mathematically. I don't do any algebra. Don't do any graph theory. I ran a bunch of stat tests, right? Which there's a lot of tension between math and stats depending on who you ask about. Is stats really math? And it is math in a sense, but it doesn't give me that math sense of like I've just completed a proof or I just finished this long triple integral, right? So there was hypothesis testing. There was making sure. So some of the things I vividly remember are, okay, we have all of this data, but first we need to make sure, does it follow the standard deviation or is it deviated in such a way that we can run this test? Because if not, then you need to run this other test because of the deviation difference. So that was more of what I did. I did run some of the tests, so then you have to determine what's the best test to run. So there are like the ANOVA t-test. I'm saying names of them, but just different testing methods. So it was an interesting glimpse into what it means to be a data scientist, or maybe better yet, a data analyst. So it was fun, but I think I didn't really get to do a lot of the math things that bring me joy. So I didn't do a lot of coding, or I didn't get the chance to do a lot of coding. I did look at code, I did tweak code. I played around with the visualization of the data, but I didn't really get to create anything in the program, which to me as a mathematician, I like to create. I like not the finished product, but I like the journey of creating my proof, making sure it follows logically, or even as I'm doing calculus or some type of written math, linear algebra even, I like the beauty of seeing the work I've created. And I think with that internship, it was more me analyzing. But I think that also was heavily my part and my choice. So they also allowed us, for at least the people I was working under, we got to pick what we wanted to do, which I think works for a lot of people. Like, hey, you're in this little range. What do you want to pick in between? But I think because I was very new, I would have liked to be given something.